All right, welcome back to Time for Fellowship with Andrew. What you thinking? There's no Matt? Yep, it's me solo. And after he gave me so much crap for missing episodes, I'm going to revel in it. That it's just me. Brought on some great guests, though, so don't even worry. We got some good guests coming in today. Currently, we are recording on Memorial Day, so I figured it'd be good to give a belated shout-out to all of our veterans and who have been, served our country and give a big thank you. Thank you so much for your service, for allowing us to maintain our freedoms in this country, and it's something that we appreciate very deeply. So thank you a bunch, and without further ado, let's kick this episode off.
Loosen up your ties and roll up your sleeves. It's time for Fellowship with Matt and Andrew. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are not necessarily the views and opinions of the Grand Lodge of Wisconsin or any other Grand Lodge or any appended body.
All right, welcome, and we have two new guests joining us today. We have Brother Jesse Regal, who is an MM of our lodge, and he's also our Junior Steward. And we also have our newest, technically our newest Fellowcraft, I should say, as of this week, Stephen Blanchard. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Hey there.
Hey. So I like to do a nice icebreaker to start people to get to know you guys. So I will start with you, Jesse. Can you share a bit about what brought you into Masonry and what keeps you here?
So as my grandma passed away, we ended up going through a lot of her stuff and finding that my grandfather was a Shriner Mason. So I just kind of wanted to go through and see exactly where he came from and his understandings of life. As you dig through the boxes, you find out more and more about a person. So being able to get into this and actually understand and see people and try to connect with people that he connected with, 20, 30 years ago is kind of cool experience.
What was the coolest thing you found in those boxes?
A Shriner's Fez and all of his old dues cards from everything he belonged to.
What shrine was he a part of?
Actually, this one.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Stephen, shooting it over to you. What brought you to Freemasonry? I know you're only a Fellowcraft, so yeah, we got a new brother coming in. I wanted to get a young MM's perspective and then a fresh, going through the process, Fellowcraft coming on in. What brought you to Freemasonry and, how'd you get here?
I think my father-in-law is a triple I Shriner as right now.
Just a bunch of Shriner kids coming in here, grandkids.
And I guess I never connected the two way back before when he always talked, he goes to the shrine meetings, he goes to the circus, it's like he goes to the football games. And I drove by this building every single day, constantly. And it's just the history of Freemasonry alone was enough to get me to think, let's see what's actually going on inside. And then my father-in-law was a good supporter of it.
Cool. Well, we're happy you guys came on down, and it's always fun to find the different ways that people join. The legacy, quote-unquote legacy, people is always fun. I think you showed me that massive Rolodex of dues cards.
Yes.
Yep. Of all his dues cards laid out. So he kept his dues cards all lined up. So it's always fun to see that kind of stuff. So I did have a hard question. I like to start with hard questions, too. All right, Stephen. What have you enjoyed the most so far? And what would you say has been the most challenging thing about joining Freemasonry now that you're right in the thick of going through the process?
We can start with challenging. I would say patience. Everything moves slow. Like, it's not slow, but it's slow when you're being told there's month gaps between things and whatnot. And I'm the type to like to move. Enjoyable. Especially here at Lake, there's a lot of younger guys. There's a lot of people in my age group. So it's not like you're going into a place that's full of old guys like a lot of the other groups can be. And just, there's a lot going on here. The different events, soup nights. So just being a part of and doing things.
Yeah, I remember when I was first joining Freemasonry, I remember it was kind of awkward in some situations because you have to meet a lot of people. And that's challenging. And you have to remember a lot of names, also challenging. And it just takes time. And I found that, so I used to have a little cheaty notebook where I write everyone's names, which I've said on the podcast before in sneaky ways to remember them. But the advice I would give, and I think I have given you, is spend time sitting with different people and getting to know people because it helps with it being less awkward. It's like joining any group. You're like, until you're comfortable with its members, like on a personal level, you kind of walk in and do the classic, I'm going to go stare at the past masters photos, which is what I did. I look at the trophy case. Jesse, do you have any advice for Stephen coming into masonry, kind of things that you learned along the way?
Try to be more outgoing. The more you want to talk to people, some of the older people have already met their friends and everything, but they're always willing to talk to people. You just have to be open to speaking with new people and, sit down next to somebody new next time, honestly, and you'll be their best friend.
Yeah, everyone always wants to talk. It's every state of communication so far. It's someone has something to say and someone wants to just sit and talk. So it's cool.
I mean, and that's the thing is I've always tried to. So I've been to lodges where they're so focused on their own friendships they have already established or the governing of the lodge that sometimes as a visitor or a new member, you kind of get left and no one notices you. And it can be hard because unless you're a super gregarious person who's like, F it, I'm just going to talk to some people and figure it out, which is, that's just like, a very small percentage of people. Even I'm very gregarious and even I would have times where I'd be like, I don't know how to get involved in this. I don't know who to talk to. I'm sure you've seen me run over and grab you from the pictures and be like, hey, stop looking at pictures. Go talk to these two guys. And you're like, just to be like, even though I might be too busy doing the administrative stuff, it'll be like, I can't talk to you for too long, but you got to come over here and try to encourage that because I think that can help be a lubricant to that process where it's like it's just gonna be awkward for a while. You're just gonna talk to people and you're gonna have small talk conversations until you start to get to know people. So it can be kind of fun.
The age of the pictures, though, are at least interesting in that concept.
Yeah, but not on the fifth time.
How's with the memorization work?
Are you memorizing their names?
Or the dates?
Jesse, I got a question for you.
Yep.
In what ways has Freemasonry contributed to your personal development?
I am much more outgoing than I used to be. I was very secluded. I like to do my own thing constantly, and it's nice to see a group of people come together under to get to one goal, basically. Just the teamwork, the friendships. Yeah, definitely more outgoing now than ever.
It is interesting that I think in Freemasonry, you'll notice I always find it fascinating because it almost has if you're thinking politics, it kind of mixes both kind of central, at first where it's collective, but highly individualistic. And so it encourages its members to work on being a strong individual, but then also to take part in a collective. And so it's kind of interesting that you see it is this melting pot that anyone can find value in.
Oh, absolutely.
And, I think that's something that's unique because you'll see a lot of different groups are kind of leaning towards, one or the other types of ideologies being this is kind of more suited, whereas you'll find masonry is this weird mix where you go, I don't think this is supposed to mix. And you're like, it can if you can kind of traverse both those things. So where did you find the biggest challenges when you were coming in?
I still find the challenge of public speaking, even just walking up and talking to somebody was very difficult. Now I feel very open, so you travel lodge to lodge, you're able to just go and speak with anybody you want. Definitely talking in front of a group of people.
You're on a podcast right now.
That's different. I don't see any of these people right now.
There's just two of us.
Yeah, it's easier.
Yep.
Yeah, I've noticed too that masonry can kind of, I was talking to a visiting brother at the Fellowcraft degree, or no, was it the entered apprentice? I think it was at the entered apprentice degree actually, and he was talking about how he was an entered apprentice as well, visiting, and he was talking about how he was so stoked to be a Mason because he's never really felt like he's had a good reason to, I don't want to say to live, but to strive to improve himself. He's never had something to say, I want to do good at this. And he said it was the first time in his life where he felt like he's like, no, I want to be better and I want to work harder. And he felt really inspired. And I was like, dang, that's kind of like that one of the secrets of masonry. What is the secret? How is it doing all this stuff? It's it just motivates people to try to do things that they would traditionally not do, like do public speaking.
Oh, absolutely.
Even, my co-host, Matt, he was apparently, quote unquote, super bad at public speaking for a long time. And then now you would never know. And you're just how did he do? Why would he have such a dramatic shift in his personality to well-round himself and to try to, balance himself? And I think it's crazy that you're how do we do this with just some silly performances we put on for each other and some fun events and just the way that Masonic philosophy and the way we teach our lessons it works. That's why it hasn't died yet, because it works.
Everyone wants to do good for the group. So it makes the new people want to do good for the group. And it kind of just grows.
You don't want to be like the outlier who's like, everyone else is trying to push themselves to do good, and then you're going to be like, whoa. So yeah, it is interesting. And I think that there's kind of a lot going into that. And, they always say that cliche, you always get into masonry you always get out of masonry what you put into masonry, which, can be it's one of those statements that is semi unhelpful when you hear it. But then later you're like, oh, that's true though. And so it's if you challenge yourself and try to say, okay, I'm not 100% good at this skill, but I'm going to, I'm in a safe space with my brethren. I'm just going to try. I'm going to try to do that and step up to it, that then they get a skill out of it that you weren't necessarily maybe thinking you would receive coming into masonry. What other skills can you guys think of that is a byproduct of being a Freemason?
Event planning, the coordination.
People management.
I've always noticed too, I think that Masons are sometimes inspired to read. You'll find people who are traditionally I don't really pick up books too much, become a Mason, but then in their curiosity to try to learn more, they start picking up books and reading. And you'll find people, we always say that Masons come from various walks of life, that you'd be like, oh, I wouldn't expect you to be a very scholarly type. And you'll look at some of these authors of Masonic books and you're like, what's his job? And he's like, he's a farmer. You're like, what's this guy's job? It's like, he's a plumber. You're like, he's writing a book? It's like, yeah, he's inspired to be an author now. And you're like, what? It's like that well-rounding where it pulls people in to try to do, I guess you say, non-stereotypical things, but it can create some impressive work too. I think being a reader and a learner is something that can often be a byproduct of Masonry as well.
Agreed. Seeing all these different people walking through here, and most of them actually end up going to the library and grabbing a couple books here and there, and you wouldn't think that some of these people would be, and it's kind of good to see. And then you can actually discuss the book, have another topic opened up between you. You say, oh, you grabbed Cloudy's book, whatever it might be, right off the shelf, and then you can get to talking to them and, get further bonds between these people.
I kind of secretly want to start. Well, I know that another brother at our lodge, Matt Adrian, has been always kind of hinting at the idea that he's thinking about eventually starting a book club. And I know a lot of lodges do that. I think that could be fun, especially if we selected books that are like the key to a good book club, I think, is don't select the hardest tome you can find out the gate. Even if you started with the 60-page Cloudy books and be like, all right, this will just get us discussing and get the thing. So it's a very achievable book, because I've seen too many times where they're like, all right, we're going to grab Morals of Dogma. And you're like, no, don't do that. Don't do it. It's too long. It's too long. They'll never finish it. They're going to lie and say they read it.
Cliff notes. Yeah.
Here's a classic question. So Masonry, and you're going to learn this along the way, and you're probably starting to smell it a little bit. Masonry is a thing that you have to be very careful on balancing with your life, because if you say yes to too much stuff, you're going to regret it. And it's so easy to do because, like you were saying, you don't want to let people down, but you have to find the balance between I am doing enough and I don't need to take on every responsibility in the world just because some group or another, whoever needs help, because everyone needs help. It's a volunteer organization. Everyone always needs help, and having the ability to circumscribe your Masonic passion. So my question is, how do you, I guess this would probably be easier for Jesse because he's more into kind of what that experience is like. How do you balance your Masonic commitments with your personal life and your other responsibilities?
When the old lady tells me no. No, I'm just kidding. I try to dedicate as much time because I do love this. I do love being a Mason. It is something I am passionate for. So I do try to help my brothers. I try to help out in any facet I can. You just got to keep balancing. I don't know how to say it, but you just want to make sure that you're giving as much as you can, but also separate time. We don't want to overextend ourselves in anything, work, family life, or Masonry. We have to keep that equal balance between everything.
The lesson of the 24-inch gauge. Have you been feeling that at all, Stephen, yet? I mean, you bake for us quite a bit, but you actually kind of seek that out yourself. You'll hunt me down and be like, I'm going to bake this. And you're like, all right, send her.
Yeah, I have a tendency just to get involved when I can. It's always going to be a balancing act, especially, I have 6.5-month-old now too.
Oh, I feel you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have him, and he is a handful. But I don't know, between my wife and I, we do try to make time for what we want to do, or what we want to be involved with, and we try to do things together. So if I set aside time for this, she's good with it, as long as we work out other arrangements for other things. one Thursday I came here with Sebastian, and
Yep.
he was just fine with it. So
And so wait, what jobs are you currently working right now? Are you doing baking and another job too?
yeah, so I run Stevens Breads, the small cottage bakery in Milwaukee, and I'm bakery tech at Palermo's in the R&D department.
So wait, sorry, you're doing 3 different gigs at once?
It's the baking is kind of across the board. I do it at Palermo's and I do it on our site. So
How did you get into baking? Where did you get this baking bug?
I was cooking initially, and then I got bored. So I figured let's do something else. Started with bread, and I thought, well, this is interesting. So I made, if anyone's ever made a sourdough starter, it's just flour and water, and you leave sit.
It's a pet that takes up your life.
Yeah. When I first started mine, it was going, and then it died.
Oh no, did you have a funeral?
It was a pretty sad moment because I thought, now's the time to get into it. I have it going. I put it in the fridge. That was it for its life. We made a new one 10 years ago, basically a month later. Got it going. It's been running ever since. And I've always just been baking since. But we got in... It would have been the week of the pandemic lockdown. We got accepted into the Winter's Farmers Market in the Domes at the time. They said make 70 plus loaves.
Okay.
I was doing 5 to 10 at most a week. Yeah. And this is all out of our home. So this is just a normal oven, a normal everything, normal fridge. So we got it done. We got 70 loaves done by Friday. And really Thursday night, they told us everything's locked down. They called it. And that
What'd
was
you do with the loaves?
Christine, my wife, she went on the Bayview Town Hall and St. Francis Town Hall, I think. And she sold all the loaves in 45 minutes or so.
Holy moly.
And then took 3 weeks of backlog in like an hour and a half.
So when one door closed, another door opened in a weird way where it's like
Yeah.
in the middle of the pandemic,
Yeah.
suddenly people are like, let's buy some loaves. And then you guys were able to take orders.
And weeks before that, people wanted to buy here and there. And we said, we don't have a store, so we could deliver. And they said, well, why would we want a stranger at your door? And then the lockdown hits and everyone says, oh, let's have a stranger at our door. So we ended up delivery, and we had a little box on our porch for people to pick up. Like, what is that? Social distancing? I can't remember the, non-touched stuff. So, and just kind of blew up. We got into a farmer's market, so I had to figure out how to get rid of my backlog and make then hundreds of loaves a week for the markets. And it just kind of, I left my job in the mortgage field, became a baker.
That's awesome. It's actually kind of funny because we have 2 guests here who are somehow intimately attached to the baking field because Jesse's lady, the name of the company is, what is it? It's Scary Bakery.
Cruel Confections.
Cruel Confections. So you end up having to do a bunch of baking stuff as a supportive dude to support that stuff too. So we got 2 people who do a lot of baking around here. So
I don't do the decorating. I hate that.
I think he does the decorating quite a bit.
Yeah, I do the 3D printed cookie cutters for her, and then I also do the airbrushing. She's doing it now as well. She's pretty good at it.
I leave that to Christine. I'll do all the baking, all the shaping, whatever. It's just, no, I hate dealing with frosting. The cookies you guys like, I bake them, but she did the decorating for everyone. So,
What do you think baking and Freemasonry have in common? What can you learn from baking that can help you as a Freemason?
as a Freemason baker, you could, again, good people skills. At least on my end of the baking, you have to interact with the public way too much. So you end up having to learn to help work with people and deal with people and to solve problems. And Masonry tries to tell you, don't just snap at people being stupid.
Yep.
And be nice to others, help others, and work together. And so kind of works that way.
What do you think, Jesse?
Ditto. No. There's a bunch of rules to baking, just like Masonry. If you follow the rules, you get a further understanding, and that you can follow it through to completion. Like you were talking about your sourdough, it didn't work out because a step failed. You're going to take the lessons you learn from Masonry and apply them to life. Not necessarily that they're rules, but they're understandings of...
I mean, it's interesting in the way that I would think, one, patience, classic. I mean, that in a lot of, crafts, that is, and professions, that's an important key. I think the rules you're talking about, the people skills, make a lot of sense where, like, sometimes when you are baking, you don't know why the rule is important yet when you're starting to do it. Like, you just are following it blindly because you're like, I don't understand yet. But as time goes on, you actually learn that there's an actual good reason behind it. You know, like your own experience must have established its value type of stuff. And I think that, you know, I think baking and masonry have a lot of overlap because they're both hands-on or will work hands-on crafts. Like you could have free and accepted bakers if someone worked really hard and just decided to like make a philosophy around it. It would kind of work. You could take the working tools and make it work because I think it kind of deals in the same thing. You're creating something, and there is a perfect version and there's a less perfect version based on how you do and what you use, and do you use them all correctly at the correct times. So yeah. Hell yeah.
How far back in history can we take our free and accepted bakers?
You know, since the first loaf of bread, so let's say, you know, into the Fertile Crescent. As long as you make a strong enough claim, mythological claim, we can be like, yeah, dude, been here since the beginning of time.
I think we have a book coming out.
What would you guys say, and you guys can choose whoever's ready to answer, are there any particular aspects of Masonic history and philosophy that you find especially interesting?
We, like in Masonry, discuss between the operative and speculative. So you look back and you think, if we actually came from stonemasons and the connection, and then you take that farther and farther back to when the guilds began, it's like, that's kind of some of the interesting is like, how did we develop from people building stuff to people talking about building stuff inside us?
It's so like even on the mythological aspect, they'll kind of say like even if it wasn't a direct historical connection, since the same principles of building are universal, like every builder would kind of have a universal language because they all are operating on the same rules of geometry, that you have like a spiritual connection, because you could argue like anyone who's ever thought about how to, you know, set things on their uprights and put them together would be, you know, able to understand the spiritual aspect of trying to do that as applied to oneself too. So that's where you get like people being like, yeah, Freemasonry notwithstanding has been around since before the Egyptians. And you're like, well, the ideas of our philosophy are kind of melded in with the building trade, and the building trade is you know, a huge historical pastime, so kind of connects it all.
Yeah.
Like tiled lodges back in Solomon's temple.
I mean, and you can even understand in that stuff, like especially for guilds, the need to guard trade secrets. Because on one end, that's where they make their money. On the other end, if someone doesn't quite understand or isn't qualified, it's unsafe. If you know, only know bits and pieces of the way to build a temple or a cathedral, it could collapse because you weren't fully trained. And so you know, it kind of serves both purpose. I mean, sure, it puts a monopoly on the skill, but at the same time, you say, I can ensure quality if I can control who is doing the work and making sure that they're trained properly. And so, you know, we adopt that as well, saying as Freemasons to really, you know, I mean, for lack of a better word, to not bastardize our lessons. It has to be someone who's coming here because they want to, and it also needs to make sure that they receive proper instruction. So if people, you know, we see it online all the time, they read whatever expose on Freemasonry, and it could be, oh, here's their degrees, here's their other stuff, and they make all sorts of wildly opinions, and it's like, well, that's because you're just reading it and making your own. You're not understanding what it represents or why. And so you have to kind of try to protect that, saying, hey, like, you should only receive this if you get it correctly, because then you'll be worthy of understanding it the right ways. But if you don't, it's not going to make sense. And then if you make a strong opinion, it's going to be a foolish one oftentimes.
And the thing is, like, there's secrets, yes, but it's not like secret. It's
when the secret's too boring, they have to decide there must be a more interesting secret. And then once you start going down that logical fallacy, you can start to create lots of interesting ideas that aren't really accurate too. It's like, yeah, it's like the moment that the exposés existed and the secrets were revealed, people were like, well, that's bullshit. And you're like, okay, sorry, dude, that it wasn't as cool as you wanted it to be. I think it's cool. And they're like, well, I wanted it to be more sinister or something. And you're like, well, it's not. And then they're like, oh, well, I'm just going to say it is.
Just roll with it.
But yeah, I think it is interesting. I like that historical aspect too. Once you become a Master Mason, there's a book called The Builders by Joseph F. Fort Newton, who's one of my favorite Masonic authors. You'll really get a kick out of that for that type of conversation on why is it connected to the stone builders. What is that? Why is that important? Why do we hold on to that? Even if we're not even 100% sure it's historically accurate all the time, but why do we still hold on to it? And there's good reason for it symbolically, even if it may or may not be true. I think it's hard to really know the definitive answer on that. I think you can tell it was at least strongly inspired, but if not, historically connected too.
Yeah, we're connected to the Grand Lodge of England, if I remember correctly, the United Grand Lodge of England.
We're connected to the Grand Lodge of Wisconsin.
Of Wisconsin, but like the entirety, we follow standards of that?
A little Masonic history. So there's basically two styles of Masonry that are kind of in popularity right now. There's Anglo-American Masonry, which is the English style and the American style are kind of from the same lineage, and they have a lot of similarity and a lot of differences, but they recognize the same tenets and landmarks of Freemasonry, so they recognize one another, meaning they can travel, visit, and do all sorts of stuff if they recognize one another, each independent Grand Lodge. And then there's Continental Freemasonry, which is more like French style, and that one has abandoned some of the landmarks that Anglo-American Freemasonry say are required. They can allow atheists in, and they take the holy writings off the Bible, and I think they put a blank book out. And that one is, you'll see more on the continent, and that one's also very popular, but they're separate. So, like, we don't recognize one another. I wouldn't call them fraudulent because they're not, like, bad intentioned or purposely being stealing stuff. They just have diverged enough from our version of Freemasonry that we say this isn't the same as us anymore. And you guys are your own thing. It wouldn't make sense for us to travel. We don't agree with the way you do Freemasonry. And, you know, that's their personal prerogative, I guess. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of what I was thinking, or where I was attempting to go to. It seems like because we follow this one, and then there's other stuff out there saying, so we do have a connection that goes back, but it's separated when it came to the U.S.
And you'll see that, you know, during the period that, you know, American Masonry was developing and all that stuff, there was still a lot of changes happening within the organization, like as far as which ritual is the correct ritual. And that's why you see so much variety, and there'll be different authors who have different types and versions, but different working tools and different things, but all in the same character. And so it took, a couple, like 100 more years for that to really be locked in place and saying, all right, this is how we're going to do it. And then you see a lot smaller changes. So during the 1700s, it was still learning what it wanted to be. And so you see, for a long time, they had the entered apprentice and the Fellowcraft degree. There was really no Master Mason degree. And then as time went on, it looked like there was like an honorary Master Mason degree that would be given when you became a past master. And then it looks like that developed. So there was a lot of discovery and changes at the time as far as what they wanted to make it be. And so to study, where our lineage comes from, oftentimes just pull the thread on where did the ritual come from. You're like, our ritual is based on Preston Webb, who are two guys, and their style is very different from, and what they consider important is very different than what the English Masons use, which is following, I think it's called emulation, and theirs has a different founder and a different kind of stuff, but it's still Freemasonry. It's just its unique version, and its goals and stuff are very much the same: brotherly love, relief, and truth. But the way they go about it and how they teach it is a little bit different, which makes traveling as a Freemason really cool.
It also seems a lot slower, the English route.
My understanding is a lot of them, they only have stated communications quarterly, but they also, they take longer to go through the degrees and stuff, and they do different types of events. It's just, they have their own culture around it too. So you get different stuff in different places, which is kind of fun. All right, Stephen, what do you think the main lessons and takeaways you got from your entered apprentice and Fellowcraft degree were?
Main lessons: don't tell secrets.
STFU on the first one, yeah.
The biggest thing, I think, it starts laying the foundation of the principles of Freemasonry when you in your entered apprentice. It starts teaching you the virtues that they want you to look at, want you to see, and kind of build you in that direction. You get your initial working tools that are talked about, and again, they're kind of like the beginner steps, the ones that say, this is what things will look like, but not anything beyond that. The Fellowcraft was nice because it took what was discussed in your Entered Apprentice and it built up. It gave you, in a sense, the middle chapter of everything, but it kind of leaves you hanging what's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So you learn a lot of the same lessons, but now you learn more advanced versions, more, in a sense, upgraded ideas.
What do you think about those 2 degrees, Jesse? What are the biggest things you took away when you received your Entered Apprentice in FC?
Out of the 2 degrees, I really like the Fellowcraft degree. Lectures, I really took to heart. The Dewdrop was my favorite part of this degree, and I've always listened to the Divide My Time. That is the most important one to me. Also the Attentive Ear, the Instructive Tongue, and the Faithful Breast. That's probably one of my favorite phrases in the degrees so far. So
it's like a really powerful tool if you actually take it to heart. They're like, so, the Entered Apprentice degree represents, being a young beginner. It's the first step. And in that way, it's being like, your only job is to listen and just remember not to tell our secrets and to start trying to work on purification. So that would mean removing superfluidities and getting your time in place, because that's also a superfluidity. You're wasting time. And so it's literally just saying, just get your, in the nice way, get your shit together, because then as you go on, more responsibility will be added. So you need to start working. And, we always say, Stephen, that you never stop being an entered apprentice when you become a master mason. You still have to be working on all 3 degrees process, because you'll find that even though you know all the things that the path that is described to you, the archetype, like follow these steps, all because, in a couple of months you got your next degree, you didn't finish what you started. That's a life thing. You got to do it the rest of your life. And then, when you're done with the purification, they say, now you're a man, you're being put to work, you're being asked actually to support one another, to not be naughty to one another, to be, good and upright, and to try to acquire knowledge and skill, saying you should have the basics of the liberal arts and sciences. This is helpful. This is a well-rounding thing. And the reason that Preston added that, one of the interpretations is, I heard he said, you cannot be truly free of mind from delusion if you do not have knowledge, because you have nothing to check it again. So a fool can be deceived because he doesn't know enough to know he's being deceived. Whereas if you have studied enough to know the earth is round and someone suddenly says, no, the earth's flat, you'd say, no, it's not. And you'd say, I know otherwise, because you have knowledge. So in the Fellowcraft, a lot of it is telling you to acquire knowledge and have an open ear for the instructive tongue, and then to take it to heart and store it secretly, I guess, because that they always say it's like the archives is the faithful breast. And so it is interesting in the way that they're kind of giving you a blueprint on how to, they're like, I don't know, how do you want to be a better person? You're like, start trying to remove some things that are holding you back and start acquiring knowledge, is a lot of what the first 2 degrees are dealing with. And I think those are powerful tools.
The first, especially when you go in like blind in every sense of the word. And you don't know what you're expecting. And then all the information's tossed at you, and then you kind of learn from there. The thing is, like how I've been looking at it, is you can only learn so much from the first one until you start getting information from the previous to be able to look back on. It's like you kind of hit a roadblock and you say, well, I don't understand what this means until I can move past this wall.
Yeah, it's like it gives you something to compare it to, which can unlock more of the symbolism too, for sure. For sure.
Like the winding staircase alone was a very interesting lecture. And as I entered apprentice, I don't think it have any meaning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like until you can see the full roadmap, it's hard to know how it all fits together. And when you can see the full, I guess you could call it a recipe, if we're going back to the baking analogy, when you can see the whole thing, you can start to kind of understand why each step is important and what function it kind of serves in the process of trying to live up to the Masonic archetype. And when you do that, it allows you to actually be like, okay, like I need to start focusing on my entered apprentice working tools because it's going to make it easier. If you have more time, you're able to apply that time, if you're good with your time, to not only helping your brethren, but also to trying to learn and to study and to do other, things that maybe you've always wanted to do. Maybe you're like, I want to improve on this type of thing. Having good grasps of time is what opens up the opportunity. And then when you are saying, well, what do I need to remove? Well, it also takes time to remove superfluities, things that you don't like that need to be squared away. That gives you the ability to do the next step. And so it's really helpful to be able to kind of come back. And one of the best things you can do as a Mason is when you're done receiving the degrees, either participate or visit and see degrees, because it helps reinforce and you kind of take more and more away each time as little nuggets of wisdom.
I do like the waiting period between degrees. It teaches you patience, that's for sure. Patience is a huge one. But it also gives you time to ponder the degree, let you come up with your own ideas of what is right. And then seeing the following degree, actually, you're like, oh, okay, this is how they meant it to work. And then we build on that. So as you go through, I'm sure you're pondering this degree now. And yeah, you're going to have a lot of open questions, which we're all willing to help and answer. But as you get further through, and once you're ready for the next degree, things will make more sense.
Which you'll be posting in like a month, knowing you.
I was told July, so
yeah, that's the goal.
like jumping to the end, I don't think is worth it. You kind of lose everything. It kind of be like if Dorothy just went to the end of the Yellow Brick Road without experiencing everything along the way. She could never do it.
Yeah, it's always that saying where it's like, do you listen to a song to hear the last note of it, or do you listen to it for the ride? And, I've seen, online and in Lodge, people being like so antsy and annoyed that they're not getting to the MM degree as fast as they would like. And it's always interesting because what I always tell them is I go, you're only an entered apprentice once, and it lasts for not that long. You're only a Fellowcraft once, and it doesn't last really that long. And then you're a Master Mason for the rest of your life. So, I would honestly slow roll things way more if I had my way. But, we do want to try to not leave people too impatient and out in the lurches on that. But I think having the patience and the time to sit with it too, and be like, this is the only info you get, ponder. And you're like, I think I already pondered it. And it's like, nah, keep looking. And, start trying to apply, because then you can get it piecemeal instead of being like, oh, where do I start? Now I have all these things that I have to keep track of. It's like, no, simplify it. Like, take it in pieces and go back to your original pieces. And, there is no rush. It's a fraternity that you can stay in your entire life. You can die as a Mason in 50, 60 years and be like, yeah. And you're like, yeah, and you were a Master Mason that whole time. You were only an entered apprentice for a couple months. Like, it's, when you look at the perspective of time, it's really, you just got to enjoy the ride and take it in pieces, Cool. Well, I think we had some good conversation today. Quick plugs. Can you please plug your bakery?
Stevens Breads. And find us on Facebook for sure. Yeah, at Stevens Breads. Really, any social media is Stevens Breads. And it's PHE, not VE.
Jesse, can you plug Cruel Confectionaries, please? Because I know there's people who do lots of events around here, and we got a couple of bakers sitting in the room right now, or baker adjacent sometimes. Their hands will probably still be on it somewhere. But more info, and where do we find them?
All right, I apologize in advance, Callie, but it's Cruel Confections. You can find us on Facebook. It is for when you want to be bitter but need to be sweet. Yep. You can find us on Facebook. Otherwise, we do have cards in our lodge. You're welcome to come and look.
What do you guys specialize in?
Cakes, cookies, custom printed cakes. So
cool. So if any brethren are listening and they are in need of getting some very, customizable baked goods, you should reach out to Steven or Cruel Confections and Steven's Bakery and Cruel Confections. They do a lot of great options, and they can fully customize, and I think, it's a good way to spice up an event with some custom. I've seen Square and Compass cookies. Steven's been bringing in dessert for our lodge, which has always been stellar. So, if you guys are hungry and looking for good baked goods, there's always opportunities to, check out a brother's business and enjoy some sweet treats. Cool. We will then move on to news and events. All right, on to news and events. So the big news coming out of Wisconsin right now is we actually have the winners for the Education Committee and Silas Shepherd Lodge of Research speech competition. So if you guys don't know, there's a competition that happens every year where you can send in education speeches that you've done for your lodge or you created for this contest, and see, you can get first, second, and third place all come with prizes. So after review by the Education Committee, they have actually reached a consensus. So in third place, we have Des Peres Lodge number 85. What is it? De Pierre. So in De Pierre Lodge number 85, they got third place with an education piece on a Wisconsin Freemason. And so that was able to get them a prize of $250 for their lodge, as well as a plaque from Silas Shepherd. So it'll be presented at annual communication. In second place, Milton Lodge number 161 has won with an education piece called The Cornerstone. That was able to secure them a $500 donation to their lodge, and they will be receiving a plaque as well. And then, in first place goes to Matthew K. from Burlington Lodge 28 with an education piece called A Dream. This one bagged him $375 for himself and $375 for his lodge, totaling $750, along with a plaque that will be presented at annual communication. This is awesome. It's a really cool competition. Congratulations to all the placers who are able to get recognition for their great education, and we will see more about this at annual communication. That'll be our news for today. We will now be moving on to events. June 7th through 8th, the 180th annual communication. So I'll see you guys all there. We will actually have a booth set up, me and Matt at it, doing rapid fire interviews. So you'll see us in the concourse. I guess not concourse. The area where there's shops in at Grand Lodge, you'll find us there. So that'll be cool, and we can't wait to see you guys and have another fun annual communication. On June 11th, the Valley of Milwaukee Scottish Rite is doing their officers installation. On the 13th of June, Eagle River Lodge number 248 is doing their Ladies at the Table event. This is going to have not one, not two, not three, but actually 7 courses of French cuisine, wine toasts, and gifts for the ladies. It's going to be $30 per person, limited to 32 people. If you are interested, please reach out to past Grandmaster Carl Wusso, and you can find his information on our lodge or in the journal. On June 14th, North Star Lodge number 187 and New Richmond Lodge number 195 are hosting a joint pork chop dinner at the American Legion Post 80, and that's going to be in New Richmond. That's going to start at 5 p.m. until gone, which I assume means until everyone leaves, so you can enjoy fellowship indefinitely, it sounds like. And that will be $10 in advance if you get your tickets early, or it'll be $12 at the door. So a great and yummy event to check out for some good food and fellowship. On June 16th, Watoma Lodge is doing their Father's Day car show. They've been doing this for a couple of years. It's always a very popular event. It's going to be from 8:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Waushara County Fairgrounds. For more information, reach out to Worshipful Brother Adam Rigdon. You can email him at watomafreemasons@gmail.com. On June 22nd, Freemasonry, they're doing a Rafters baseball game, which is going to be for Wisconsin Freemasonry's Acts of Kindness State Patrol Initiative. It's going to be at 7 p.m. at Witter Field in Wisconsin Rapids. The ticket's going to be $50, which is going to cover the cost of admission and a donation to the State Patrol backpacks. So for more information on that, please check out your Wisconsin Journal. I know they have a nice little pop-up in there on page 14. On June 24th, Glen L. Humphrey Lodge is doing a feast of St. John the Baptist, classic Masonic tradition. This one is going to be at Glen L. Humphrey Lodge. It's going to be at 6:24 p.m. for fellowship, food, and there will be a discussion led by Worshipful Brother Chris Ludke, who is, you'll probably heard him on the Further Light podcast, which is another great Wisconsin podcast, and he will be doing a discussion. They have full roast beef dinner. It's going to be $25 a person. It's open to EAs and everyone up from there. You can purchase your tickets by June 17th by emailing Bill Marble. Also on June 24th, we have another, guess what? We had none, now we have 2. Watoma Lodge is doing a feast of St. John the Baptist as well. This is another part of the state, so we're getting some good coverage to celebrate what is a time-honored tradition where on this day, on the feast of St. John the Baptist, brethren from around the world will be getting together. So it's great. If you can make either of these ones, please do. This is going to be a wonderful feast made for a king. It's going to be $30 a ticket, and you can get your tickets on Eventbrite, and you can find that link on their social media, and I think it's gone out probably in a handful of emails as well. Otherwise, if you're having trouble, just email Worshipful Brother Adam Rigdon, which is at watomafreemasons@gmail.com. On June 30th, Reedsburg Lodge number 79 is doing a car show from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. A registration is at 9 a.m., $10 a car. It's going to be at the Reedsburg Historical Society Log Village. And if you want more information, please contact Brother Richard Bennett for more information. Last but not least, hopping into July. On July 8th, there will be the 21st annual Lake County Masonic Lodge Pay It Forward Golf Outing. This is going to be held at The Legend at Brandy Brook in Wales, Wisconsin. For more information, please reach out to Lake County Masonic Lodge. Cool. And that is going to be news and event. Jesse, Steven, thank you so much for coming on and joining me today.
It was a good time.
Yep, had a blast. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for listening, guys, and until next time, take care.